At this time, I call the regular city council meeting to order at 6:02 PM on Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. We have with us tonight Deputy Mayor Pro Tem and District 4 Council Member Stephanie Thomas and District 5 Council Member Tim Royce. Mayor Rick Carmona has a previous engagement and is excused from tonight's meeting. Grady Simpson will not be joining us tonight as well, and he is also excused from today's meeting. At this time, we will have City Attorney Greg Schumpert lead us in invocation.
Let's all stand and bow together. Our righteous Heavenly Father, we come to you now at this time, asking you to look down upon our city, upon our state, and upon our nation in these perilous times that we have. We'd ask that you give us wisdom, give us the knowledge to do things that you would have us to do, and in the way you would have them done. We'd also offer a special prayer this evening for Miss Carol Holland, who has suffered a loss, a death in the family, and is out of town and traveling. We'd ask that you comfort her and give her safe travels and safe return. And be with this council, Lord. We ask your blessing on each and every one of them and upon our city. And just help us to be the kind of city that we all want it to be and we all feel like it can be. And just be with us and guide us and forgive us where we fail you is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Everyone will remain standing and for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
For mayor and council community recognition and events, I want to recognize the city of Terrell and all the other cities in Kaufman County that recently participated in Kaufman County Day at the Texas State Capitol. We had a good turnout, meetings, and it's always great to have a good group of individuals join to learn more about city government and advocate for our city goals. Do we have any other recognition or events? No, I'll add one more. We do have our Mayor Rick Carmona that on March 29th of 2022, today, he did attend the second annual Vietnam War Veterans Tribute at Trinity Baptist Church. So we thank all our veterans for their service. Hearing none, I'll move to item 5. Hear remark from visitors. Dawn, do we have any visitors today? Thank you. We'll move on to item 6.1, adoption of minutes. At this time, we will discuss and consider minutes from the regular city council meeting on March 22nd, 2022. Are there any corrections or adjustments from council? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the meeting as submitted?
Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes from March 22nd as presented.
Thank you. Hearing a motion from Tim Royce. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second from Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Thomas Holmes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Meeting minutes approved. At this time, we will discuss Building Standards Commission, appointments and reappointments. This falls under City Secretary Don Stile. If we can, please hold questions until the end. Don, go ahead.
Mayor and Council, in your packet is the Building and Standards Commission board roster. Again, we talked about this last week, and this is a board that has not been active since 2018. The Municipal Development Department is contacting the previous members to see if they would like to be reelected or reappointed, and I will have more information at the next meeting. And this is under the oversight of Tim Royce, this board.
Don, do we think we'll be Will this be a vote next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I won't promise that we'll have all of them ready for next time, because there are quite a few to be reappointed, but we want to go ahead and knock out the ones that have asked for reappointment.
Sure, sounds good.
Let me say, this is a very important board, one I've dealt with quite a bit and have tried to train in the past and would be happy to do so again with the new board. It has what I would call quasi-judicial authority, because once its rulings are made, any appeal from that has to be done in district court in Kaufman County. And so that gives it a lot of power, and it's something that is greatly needed to keep the standards and the codes of our city intact. So I think that's something that we need to certainly move forward with. It's worked very well in the past, and I'm sure it can again. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on and move on to item 8.1. At this time, we'll discuss Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation, PADIC Park Improvements. This typically falls under Director of Public Services Glenn Caldwell. Mike will take the lead on item 8.1. Once again, if we can hold questions until the end.
So Mayor and Council, we had a Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation meeting last Friday. Had several good discussions item on there. We're making progress on complete streets. We're making progress on our sesquicentennial mural project. And we also had Glenn at that meeting to present how we're doing on implementing things already approved by City Council and already approved by the PADIC Board in previous spending. We're out there doing the implementation now. So Dawn, if you don't mind advancing whenever I ask you. Here's the first slide. The little blue dot there is where the modular restroom test location is going to be. So you can think of this as just on the west side of the pool. As you know, there's a bathroom on the north side of that parking lot right now. I'm sorry, on the west side of the parking lot right now, right next to what we refer to as the bullpen kind of an area. That's where our staging area is for our equipment over there. So the bathroom will move slightly, and then we're going to reuse the structure that's the current bathroom for some other park maintenance purposes. The next slide gives you a quick look at that. It was a simple idea, and that was basically, since we're going to do several of these in the park, the biggest attractive building out there is obviously the Excel Center. So we're copying a little bit of the look of the Excel Center, and that's what you'll see there. So that's the design. We've done a lot of steps in this purchase because of all of the gridlocks nationwide. We won't have all of our materials in place until mid-July, and then we would get the device. The restrooms arrived over the summer, and we would have it up and operational by the end of September. The goal is, after we get this one installed, make sure that we like it. It's designed to be, you never say vandal-proof, right? But it's designed to be much more resilient to potential vandals than some of the ones we have out there now. Easier to clean. You can actually walk into it and just power wash every square inch of it, so that's a great thing. And we think they'll be great, and these are used all over the nation, but we want to get it here and really test drive it before we order. And remember, there's a fairly good chunk of spending in the PADIC Board borrow that they did over the summer that's associated with replacing all of the restrooms in the entire system. So that's that. The next slide is the ball field lighting at Breezy Hill. This has been an effort ongoing for a long time. And Steve Rogers used to be an advocate of this, and now Glenn Caldwell's turned over on his watch to be able to get it done. So here's a shot at the lighting. You can see how good the infill looks right now. We're trying to get this up to be basically meeting college women's softball standards is sort of the design goal for the layout of this softball field, because it's got the right spacing for that. The next slide just shows you a different view of it. You can see that we've got the covers on the shade structures out there, and then you can see the sidewalk in this shot a little bit better than the other one. The next slide goes over to just a side view of it. This one we're using to show you that you can see that dugout on the sort of middle bottom part of the page there. We are going to receive the benches and then the cover over the bullpen. So that's kind of the last thing we're waiting for before we call this wrapped up. The next slide is the nighttime shot. The guys went out there and got a nighttime shot of it because I think it shows and highlights the lighting very well. It'd be a real pleasure to have folks out there in the middle of the summer able to play a late game. The next slide is just another view of that, and you can see some of the other lighting in the park in this particular shot. Moving on, the next shot is one more, just another angle of that. The next slide, another one. We're very proud of the lighting, so that's okay. The next slide shows you just a little pickup game that park staff helped coordinate when they were out there last time around. So that's great. The community's already out there enjoying it and having a good time with it. Next slide is another shot of that. Go ahead to the next one and the next one. There you go. All right. So here's the ones at Ben Gill. All of the yellow and orange dots are where the lights are going in. You can see those up there. I think we did a Facebook post with Mayor Cremona and President Lucas. So we're kind of getting that information out right now that all of this is out there. The next slide shows you just a pretty picture of what those lights look like. The next slide shows you the ones over at the football area. Go ahead to the next one. So here's the summary. We budgeted. So Council Resolution 1053, as you often do, you say, okay, we got a recommendation from the PADIC board. You confirmed their request whenever you passed Resolution 1053. And so that had the estimated cost for each of their budgeted items here. So the ball field lighting at Breezy Hill went in basically right around the number that we were hoping for, a little bit under, so that's good. We're working on the Breezy Hill land acquisition, land preparation, drainage. A lot of that is associated with the taking out Polk. Remember, that's part of your overall park plan, and there's several steps we have to go through to get to the point where that section of Polk can be combined, the park area on the north and the main part of the park area. So that is underway. The Ben Gill parking lot lighting, that's on hold, trying to get some of the details ready there. The Ben Gill park field lighting, we need a few more weeks to get those to be operational, but you can see that dollar amount of actual expenses right on target. On the restroom package, we did budget $1.5 million to replace all of the restrooms, and the first one was $245,000. The contingency there is $400,000. I can tell you that we're eyeballing doing a little bridge over the drainage that's behind the Excel Center, so we can have a better connection between the Excel Center and the soccer field lighted areas. We feel like as those lights go up, there's just going to be a lot of traffic that wants to go back and forth between those. So we're going to get pricing on a little bridge set up. Probably won't actually be little, but probably a fairly robust bridge that will go back and forth over that drainage between the Excel Center and the soccer field. And we'll get some prices on that. We'll show that to the park board. We'll show that to the PADIC board. And if they like it, then we'll come forward and say, okay, here's an option for spending that contingency on partially on that project. I think we'll have more contingency after that. So there's a quick overview. Glenn had personal business to take care of tonight, so I'm just playing backup.
Thank you, Mike. It's always exciting to see when the resolutions, the funding that both the PADIC and City Council approves are being implemented, and then we see, the nice photos of the kiddos with the smiling faces. So really, this is about, our current kiddos and families and our future kiddos and families. So kudos to staff and the PADIC board and our entire council. One thing I do want to mention about the bridge, it's something that I've also been seeing and wanted to mention to council and yourself. So I'm so glad that you're already ahead of the mark and thinking about adding a bridge, because I do see kiddos and on their bikes, or have to get off their bikes and then walk over between the Excel Center and the soccer field or over to the baseball field. So I think it's a good proposition to give to the PADIC and later come to the council. Are there any questions or comments of council regarding this item?
When I looked at this, I was happy to see that the Breezy Hill project came in under budget. I'm always curious to where those funds go. I've been known to be called, I've been called a miser before, so I'd be interested to see what we do with those funds. And then also, I know I mentioned before, the older I get, when I go to an establishment or a place, I want to know where the restrooms are. So I know I'm very familiar with Breezy Hill Park. I'd like to also look at some of those alternative form of funds when we look at where the bathroom, the ones that we have, they're in the, I guess I would call it the northwest corner, right behind the community center. I'd like to get some input from my community members and that community that uses that park, and maybe even the association, because they may have some ideas too about how we can use some of the alternative funds, and then the money that we didn't use that came under, that we were under budget on. But good job, and we want to really be appreciative of the PADIC board and the park board for what they do.
I think all that's well said. I would just, for way of clarification, so everybody realizes, and I know you already know this, but just to clarify for everybody, the restroom package in the PowerPoint that's listed is $1.5 million. That includes the money necessary to take the existing bathrooms at Breezy Hill and replace them with one of these modular units. So we'll do an upgrade of the current restrooms with a modular package there. And I know that the idea that Glenn has already started talking to Park Board about is, well, if we can generate leftover money out of this package, would we be able to afford to put another restroom that would be, I guess I would call it sort of just on the south side of the basketball courts at Breezy Hill? I think that's been the discussion about, well, do we want to do that? Do we not want to do that? That kind of gives you a top of the hill restroom and a bottom of the hill restroom. But anyhow, I'm going to let the park board keep hammering on that idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I would also say, hey, this was a good plan, right? Years in the making. We started talking about this way back in 14 and 15 and leading on up through the teen years. So, and very appreciative of council support and then also the citizen support, right? Really, this was all about, we wanted to do it and we needed a funding mechanism. And the funding mechanism for this is the PADIC board, and that was a voter-approved item. So I think it's important to just give a nod to the voters that said, hey, you voted on this package, it accumulated some funds, and now the projects are hitting the ground. So, you know, for government, I think we're moving pretty fast. So anyways, just wanted to say that.
And Mike, I know you mentioned you and Allison and the mayor and Tori Lucas are working on some photos and getting some messaging out there. I wonder if, we could include some message about, your vote matters or your input matters, here are the results, a photo here and there. That may already be included in some of the messaging. I think, Tim certainly makes a good point as far as, this is something that the voters and community members certainly put forward, and now, we're starting to see, we're just at the start.
No, all of that is great direction for staff, and we'll take that to heart. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, hearing no other questions or comments, at this time, we will discuss the agreement for professional services for wastewater prioritization Phase 3, and City Engineer Steve Rogers and Assistant City Engineer Mike Mateska will lead us in this item.
We'll go through a PowerPoint presentation first, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and you have it in your packet. So I'm going to go through that. This provides a lot of history and background for those of you who have not been around council in this for a while. This is a good kind of look back at what's been done and get everybody up to speed on where we're going here. So we're going to look at some previous studies that we've done, and then we're going to move into the proposal tonight that Mike McKeska is going to go over with you to do this prioritization. So I go back about 20 years ago, we did a sanitary sewer evaluation study. And this was kind of an EPA process, and you went in, you documented your system, and you tried to gain data that would help you to make improvements in your system. And around 2005, we had a lot of large acreage developments hitting us, and this was right before the 2008 downturn in the economy. And we did a large study that was related to how much everybody needed to pay to wastewater to make kind of more of a regional type system for us. Then in 2011, we started looking even bigger than that, and we did a regional wastewater option, did a study then to try to help us understand more about treatment options, and we were trying to defer having to spend money at our plant even at that time. And then in 2013, I asked to do what I call wastewater prioritization study phase 1. And we were able to do that. We spent quite a bit of time and money on that study, and we gained a lot of good information on that, and I'll go over some of that here in a minute and explain that to you. In 2016, we did an update to that. We did phase 2, and we've been able to refine where we need to be spending money, and we're at a point now, 6 years later from that, where we need more data to kind of help us continue to spend our money wisely. So coupled with all these studies, 2004, we implemented impact fees, and every 5 years, you're required to update them. 2009, 2014, and 2019, and you can kind of see a couple of those prioritization studies were done prior to updating our impact fees, and that helps us to refine our wastewater capital improvement program. Our next update is scheduled to occur somewhere between September 23 to April 24, and we may move that up sooner, but that's the current schedule to meet our 5-year statutory requirement for that. So this is a good graph, and I hope you spend a minute here to look at this, because this is important. The work we did years ago, the left side of the graph is 2003, and the right side is 2021. And the blue line represents the plant flow, the average daily flow over the year for that year. And then it's got rainfall in there, and you can kind of see the rainfall going up and down. The thing I want you to notice is that we did a lot of work between 2003 and 2013 that plugged a lot of large holes in our system. And we were able to reduce our wastewater treatment plant flows over that time. So you notice from 2003 to 2013, we were on a steady downhill climb. And then after the downturn in the economy, as things picked up 2014, 2015, 2016, we started ticking up in our average daily flow at the plant. And we're just now getting back to the point where we were 18 years ago in average daily flows on the plant. So this saves us money and chemicals, pumping, a lot of things like that. This shows the value of doing some of these things here, because it reduces flows when you don't treat as much rainwater coming in, and it allows us to save money on an ongoing basis. So the money we've invested is good money that we've invested in our system, and it's represented by that graph. Okay, so what did we do in phase 1? Again, a little more details. We documented 10 years of maintenance and rehab activities. We did a lot of flow monitoring in our system and assessment. We did some capacity evaluations in parts of it, and we developed a prioritized CIP to help us, again, determine where's the best way for us to spend our money and prepare for growth where we can. And so this is born from that, and we've done, again, we looked at Rose Hill at the time, because that's an ongoing issue we have. The Rose Hill lift station is, it's kind of in the middle of the page right there. You know, with Rose Hill lift station is just north of I-20 on Rose Hill Road. And it collects everything on the west side of town. I'll show you some more detail on that here in just a minute. So what happened is, from this, we started doing improvements in the system. So if you notice the blue and the green, sorry, let me go back. Those were some long stretches we did along Bachelor Creek. So that was, ended up being over about 2.5 miles of pipe. is what we wound up replacing in the system. This made a big improvement on that side of town and bought us a lot of time and capacity in doing that. Now we're looking at doing these Bachelor Creek and Highway 205 relocations that are gonna take what's the #1 priority on our wastewater list and has been for over 15 years, and that's the line running down 205 from Colquitt Road. We're glad to be able to move in the next, hopefully, 2 years and replace that line. This is the downtown area here, and again, Mr. McKeska does these fancy little things here. That's Griffith Avenue, and you notice the priority numbers. We had #1 out there on Highway 205. So #3 that I just, that circled there, that's Griffith Avenue, the part we just rebuilt and replaced. That was part of #3 on our priority system. We also did a project about 8 years ago on Moore Avenue, east of State Highway 34, that replaced a large main on US 80 that was #2, a big portion of #2 on our system. And then if you notice the north alley that we're replacing right now, that's the yellow #2 that we're doing right now. We're upsizing that main. And then the grant project you have is the other yellow line, the Bachelor, or the Delphine project, the Delphine sewer that you just approved the contracts on the other night. That's another portion of #2 on our wastewater prioritization list. So you can start to see that we're targeting a lot of things that we already know where we need to be working to help us out here. We're gonna do South Alley here when we get a few more things going, and that's another one of the #2 projects. So we're hitting a lot of those projects that are 1, 2, 3, low down on the priority list that are good for us to get knocked out. We can't do all that because we can't afford to do it. So as we moved into Phase 2 wastewater prioritization in 16, we did a lot of work within the system to try to figure things out. We started looking at in more detail. We did some smoke testing where you put smoke in it, and the picture on the left shows smoke coming out of a yard. This helps us to show a resident that you got a problem in your yard, and we can find places where there's problems in the pipe where we see smoke coming out of the ground when we smoke test. You can see the pipe on the right. It's an old clay tile line. It's cracked up. It's in bad condition. And that's part of what we get out of this. We get more data and more information to help us understand where the real problems are and what they are. So these are some of the things that we did back then. We did televised, so you go in with a TV camera, you run it down the line, different methods of doing that. We use pole cameras at the manholes where you can peek from the manhole down so far down the line to look at that. We did some rapid assessment, some acoustic testing with some newer technology back in 2016, and some smoke testing. There's even more technology upgrades now in doing these assessments that we're going to look at going forward one of these days. So this is kind of a summary of what we did back in 2016. We covered a lot of the system. We did a lot of looking, and we found a lot of places that need a lot of help in our system. And okay, so Phase 3, what do we want to do going forward? I'm kind of giving you the history and brought you up from 2002 to the last study we did, 2016. We haven't really done anything since then. So what is it we want to do with Phase 3? Well, we want to look at the Rose Hill lift station. This is a big improvement in our system. If we have to move it, when we run out of capacity for it, there's not a lot of good options, and we've known this for a long time. So we're going to look at the flows that are impacting the Rose Hill lift station and what's downstream of it. We're going to look at the station itself, the pumping, and how efficient does it work right now to make sure we're doing the best we can there. We're going to try to maximize the life of the Rose Hill lift station. So we'll get a report telling us what we can do there and what our options are. We're going to do some flow metering in the system, and we're going to do some television inspection of a portion of the system. So this is a map, and the red dots show we're going to put some flow monitors out. We're going to put 6 out in the system. We gather data. We gather daily flows. We'll get some rainfall. We'll see what's surging in the system, and that helps us refine more of where we need to work. And so we're going to have one around the Rose Hill lift station that'll help us out as well. So what's happening in our system here? Well, let me kind of give you the idea here. This is a good map that Mr. McKiska put together. So you see the Crossroads development on the left side of the map. And at the bottom of that page, there's a Market Center lift station. And you know, right now, we're about to spend over $2 million to upsize that lift station from 0.3 to 1 MGD. So if you follow the red arrows, that's the way that station currently flows, and it flows down to Bachelor Creek, and it ends up down at the Rose Hill lift station, which is kind of on the bottom right-hand side of the map. We know that the Woodlands is under development right now. We know that there's senior living coming adjacent to it. We have a couple of other developments out in the area. We have the Rose Hill Estates that may come back, and that's just as big as the Woodlands. We have a development called the Preserve that you've looked at once before already, and we're waiting for them to come in. They'll have, how many houses are in the Preserve, Charles? Huh? Yeah, about 700 houses in it. So there's going to be a lot of flow in Rose Hill. We knew this because we knew that area was going to develop, and it's time for it to grow. So we knew there was going to be more flow coming from there, and we preserved some flow for that. But when everything's built and actually there, and then we have Crossroads coming, everything's going to end up at the Rose Hill lift station. And downstream of the Rose Hill lift station, it flows through the Woodlands development, through the what they call the President Streets out there, that subdivision out there, the terraces. It goes beside the Colonial Lodge and ends up flowing down by the Legacy Ag Credit and back by the airport, goes all the way down behind QT and ends up under Interstate 20 and eventually makes its way to the plant. So that system is flowing through an existing system, and that's going to one day max out at some point. We don't know if it's going to be the lift station or what's downstream of it. So this is kind of another look at the Rose Hill lift stations on the left side. There's some force mains immediately upstream of the lift station or downstream, and then it flows into a gravity situation. So force mains where you pump and you're forcing it till it hits a high point, and then it starts flowing by gravity on its own. So that system I just described to you is kind of in red, and we're analyzing that part of the system to make sure there's plenty of capacity in that portion of the system. At the bottom of the map here is the plant. It's right off the edge of the map here is the plant. So we're going through kind of an existing developed area to get there from the Rose Hill lift station. And we're going to have capacity problems there at some point in the future. We're going to try to figure out exactly when that is so we can answer that question, give you better data so we can make better decisions. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about benefits here. So again, we've got a lot of stuff going on in our system. We've done a lot of rehab, and we need to see how effective some of that's been. We've replaced some stuff. We need to see if we've made any more significant reductions in flow if we can. We're going to see how much development we can handle in this with Crossroads, everything happening on Rose Hill Road. And we're going to have a 10-year look ahead to see what do we need to do in the next 10 years at Rose Hill, at the lift station and downstream. And that's really what we're trying to answer the question of. And so, again, there's the lift station on the left side, and then we have these improvements we need to make downstream of the lift station. And are we going to be able to make these improvements, and what's going to make economic sense? Upsize the lift station, upsize the downstream mains, make repairs in them. We're not sure right now. So the options that's been in our CIP for a long time is to relocate the Rose Hill lift station. So on the left side of the map, you see the labeled Rose Hill lift station. So if we locate that with the blue dashed line going down to the bottom of the page where it says relocate lift station, that's a significant improvement in our system. And then we build a force main and force it over to the plant if we do that. If we don't do that, then we may have to upsize some things in our system where it shows the blue 54-inch line on the bottom right-hand side of the page. That's upsizing the main interceptor leading into the plant. The plant's labeled right there at the bottom right-hand side of the map. And then the red 30-inch, that's an upsize from what's there right now. And there may be other improvements needed. Well, we have to parallel this line. We don't know yet. So we're kind of looking at an either-or option here. Do we make this significant improvement in our system, or how much do we have to spend to do these other improvements? So this is kind of really what this boils down to. The left side is Rose Hill. Do we have to replace the 30-inch interceptor? Do we have to do these other improvements? Do we have to expand the lift station? Do we have to put in the 54-inch interceptor? And what portion of those can we delay and put off? Do we want to spend that amount of money on the left side, or on the right side, do we want to do what we've had in our CIP for almost 10 years, and that's make a large investment in relocating Rose Hill and building that new lift station down south of Interstate 20. That's kind of really what the crux of this study is that we want to do. It's going to center around this right here primarily, because this is a big improvement, and it's something staring us at the face, and we want better data to guide you and the city on when do we need to pull the trigger on which improvement, which one makes the most economic sense now and later. And so we're going to, again, look at population flow projections that are hitting this thing. We're going to study that in more detail. We're going to look at the pumps at the station and make sure can we upsize them? How can we maximize that? Are they pumping right? And then we want to make sure we know how long we can utilize what we already have in place, upsizing it a little more, or do we need to relocate it? And we'll do any interim improvements that are going to prolong the life of this, because these are big dollar decisions that we're looking at here to make. So with that, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'll take any questions at this point, and then Mike's going to come up and kind of go over the proposal that we have mostly in the budget now. We're going to need more money, but we have this budgeted. It's in the current Utility Capital Reserve Fund. And so we're going to need some more to make this a complete study. So are there any questions for me at this point from anybody?
So,
Thank you for providing that update. It certainly sounds like we have a capital improvement project, the CIP, that details what one option is, and we have growth that's occurring now and future growth. So the other option sounds like it's certainly would be taking that road into consideration, and also considering the funding for it. My question would be, when would we anticipate this item to come forward again? Is it at the next council meeting, or?
Yeah, Mike's going to be back next week to get this item, this proposal that he's going to talk to you about now, approved, and we want to get started on it because we need to get these flow meters out before it really starts raining, because that's when you capture good data. You correlate flow and rainfall and how much it surcharges your pipe, and this gives you a lot of good data. And so we're trying to get the flow meters out right away. So if we get this approved next week, we're going to turn them loose on putting flow meters in the system right away. This will take us the rest of the fiscal year to get most of the data. We feel like before the end of the calendar year, we'll have everything done.
So Mayor and Council, just for clarity, on page 31 of your packet, that's where the professional services agreement picks up. That is what Mr. McKeska is going to talk about.
And do we have,
Did you?
Tim have?
I did. So if you'll put me on 19, just one more. Okay, so question, if we do the Rose Hill alternative, which looks like a good alternative, right? So you would say we would abandon the pipe on the right or on the east?
We would not abandon. It's a good question, and this is a complicated answer. It's not as easy as it sounds. We have an existing collection system, an existing development along this downstream portion. So where it says 12-inch force main at the top of the page, that would be the only thing that we would really abandon. If we move the station down to the bottom of the page, we would not need that force main anymore. And we would need everything else that's downstream through this system all the way to the plant. because it's collecting other flows from other locations. Now, again, the flow will go significantly down. If the stations move, well, then we won't have a capacity issue in there. We'll still have improvements that need to be made because it's old pipe, and there's improvements that are needed in there, but it's not an either or. If we make this improvement, the point I'm trying to make, it's not equal money to do one or the other necessarily, but it's big money probably to do either option. We just don't know exactly what we need to do if we don't relocate and do the Rose Hill alternative and we leave the station in place. We're not sure exactly what improvements need to be made and when downstream of that system that's depicted on this page. It could be up to 18 million. If that's the case, we may want to relocate this station now and defer these improvements in the system to a later date. But it's going to be large money either way, we feel like.
So I would say I'm not an engineer, but man, the Rose Hill alternative looks like it is the solution that takes us into the future, just for flow purposes. So that's my thought. And then McKeska,
It's going to have to be made one day. We're trying to figure out if it's that in the next 10 years or the next 5 years or when. That's really the question we're trying to answer for you, give you better data.
Yeah, yep, no, that's good. And then I would say McKeska, the presentation looks good.
Yeah, he did all the work. I just got up here and presented it. So any other questions for me before I turn it over to Mr. McKeska?
Basically, if this comes up next week, we vote on it, it'll allow you to go ahead and initiate getting those flow meters out so we can start this phase 3
Yes,
study.
ma'am. We want to get those out as soon as possible before the rains really hit. So we're going to miss tonight's rain, but
Yeah.
we hope the next one we catch. So thank you.
Hey, and not to derail, but the Biden administration, and you can tell me that we can talk about this later, but the Biden administration did put forth a big infrastructure package starting last year. It's kind of flowing through the years. Are we tapped into that? Are we looking at this?
We're waiting any day for that to come out. There's no details that we found yet on the wastewater portion of that.
Okay, that's it. I
Nothing
just
published yet.
heard NPR plugging it
There's a lot of
plugging
people
it
who are
today,
just
so-
waiting for that to happen, so.
Okay.
Okay. Well, as Mr. Sims mentioned, the professional services agreement starts on page 31. Page 32, there's a scope of services. If you look over 32 through about 35 or 6, it highlights the work. So kind of rephrase or a little bit what Steve covered. This agreement, the primary goal is to put out flow meters, you capture data, you take a look also at the projected flows because we know there's developments. Those developments around Rose Hill, to preserve the woodlands, Rose Hill Estates, Terrell Senior Living Phase 3. We know they're either active or they're coming. And then we know Crossroads is going to keep growing and we're going to have more flow, peak flow from the Market Center lift station, which is going to start construction real soon and go to 1 MGD. So we know about those. There's also a lot of developers kicking tires all up and down Bachelor Creek. It goes all the way up to Griffith. So there's a large area, whole side, west side of town that flows down here. And so we know what we have to plan for. We know what we could have to plan for, and projecting some timing on these flow increases is critical, okay? So, so when we do the flow monitoring, get data, we look at projected flows, we take a look at our actual lift station capacity. They're going to do that by some field testing, going to look at our flow monitoring data. You can have, as an example, you can have a rated capacity of the pump, and then you can have an actual capacity, okay, maybe a little bit different. So Freeze and Nichols is going to do some field work to evaluate that. They'll take a look at updating our wastewater model that they've already, developed over the years. There's going to be some additional pipes that have been replaced and upsized. They'll add that. They'll calibrate that model to take a look at what it's showing versus what we're seeing in the flow monitoring data. That's a calibration procedure to get it as accurate as they can. And then from there, they'll develop the alternatives, okay, and say, okay, based on projected flows over the next 5 years, what do we see coming into the station? How can we handle it downstream? And then we have some, it's laid out what Freeze and Nichols put together. They call it special services, but there's some money set aside for TV investigation, that if we believe we need to look at some more of the downstream gravity pipes from Rose Hill and make sure there's not any immediate repairs we need to make. We've already made some, but that was from data collected about 6 years ago, so there may be some other more immediate needs. And anyway, so from there, they'll develop some alternatives and take a look at that. And like Steve said, we don't want to come forth and say, let's spend $18 or $20 million if you can defer that cost for several years. It makes sense to do that if it's prudent, so we'll find out. So the recommendation that will come forth is a fee not to exceed $147,400 and for Freeze and Nichols, and they'll have some subs doing some flow monitoring and field work. So, any questions?
Question on the flow meters through the system. Certainly, we probably have a flow meter at the station, but we don't have just flow meters throughout the system that just remain in the system?
No, we do not.
Is that a common practice?
To have them or not,
Is a common
there's a
practice
lot of
to have them.
there's a lot of systems that do have them. It's an ongoing expense, but you can collect. You can have data year round, but there's a fairly substantial cost. I mean, compared to spending $50,000 every 5 years, you could have an ongoing cost, but you lose data. So it's kind of a decision on how you want to review your system.
Okay.
Well, hearing no other questions, Steve and Mike, we appreciate your presentation and all the detailed information. We'll expect this item to come forward at the next meeting. At this time, we will discuss Tyler Technologies contract. This item falls under our Library IT Director, Rebecca Anderson.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Thank you for having me this evening. First I want to say thank you to John Cross, who he has worked so hard and is doing a phenomenal job negotiating and working with Tyler Technologies to get this contract where we, the city, want and need it to be, so that we're getting what we want and need from them. This is just going to be a high-level overview of the contract. It's a complete copy for you to peruse this exciting piece of reading at your own leisure between now and next week. There are a few provisions that are still being negotiated, and so there are a few things in here that might look different next week, and we'll highlight those as well. And then we'll bring it to you for an actual vote. One of the negotiated pieces is still the financial schedule, and so you won't see that necessarily today. But John is working really hard to get that, again, where we want it to be. The first page is on page 63 of your packet, is a SAS agreement, and it is just a general term of our software, what they're going to provide, what it does. You'll see on page 64 no, that's wrong. I wrote it down as 64, but it's not. It is on page 70. That it says it is a 3-year term agreement with 1-year auto renewal, and it is actually going to be a 5-year. So that's one of those provisions that we're going to need to update. Tyler is on board with the 5-year plan. They don't go beyond 5 years, but they are on board with that. So the final copy will say 5 years with a 1-year auto renewal after that. This agreement also covers the general maintenance and support coverage that they provide, and what we'll get. It ensures that we know upfront what we're expected to provide as far as services and resources, what they're going to provide as far as services and resources to get this project completed within budget and in a timely manner. And again, you can go through there. There's a lot of technical terminology and a lot of legalese in there, so feel free to make notes and questions about things if you find something that you would like to know about. On page 76, there is a full list of all of the contracts or the documents that are included in the contract. So if you're looking for something specific, that kind of just helps you narrow down where to look. Page C. The invoicing, the next page is the invoicing and payment policy. That's general terms. Nothing really stood out to us. Again, everything that we would like to change, they have been pretty agreeable to. And if there's anything else, Mary Gail and Greg have both given their statements as far as things that they might have been concerned about. And we've addressed those today. So we've got those worked out as well. And we can bring that information to you next week when we go into a little more detail. And then on page 86, this is our main document. It's the statement of work and what we're going to do and what stage we're going to do these items. You'll notice in there that there is a list of job descriptions, roles, and responsibilities for different people. That includes what the staff on the city side is going to be expected to do, and the Tyler side. Who's going to do what, so that there's no confusion and there's no delays in the project. Unfortunately, when you have delays in a project like this, because everything is done, has to be done in a certain order, on the back end, you can incur some costs that you weren't necessarily budgeting for. So we make sure that everybody's on the same page and we know what we're doing so that the project moves smoothly. It is a long, in-depth project, and so it's important that we're all clear on where we are at and where we're going. The statement of work, project timeline, or the project schedule that is included. It is a general example. Our schedule will be specific to us, and so they have to finalize the contracts and then get with our staff to find out what we need based on our individual departments. This first part of the project covers finance and HR, police, and court. The ERP is your finance and HR departments. The New World and Brazos are the PD and the ticketing system, and then Encode is your court system. Just a little terminology there in case you're looking through there and you see the different groups. One thing to note is that there are, on page 98, you'll see the city roles and responsibilities. The city executive sponsor, that's going to be Mr. Sims. And then there is a steering committee. The steering committee is the highest level of stakeholders. So like your department heads, the ones that are going to be making some of the decisions on what this software is going to look like for us on the back end. They base that on what we're doing now, what we use, what we need, where our current softwares fall short. And the steering committee are basically the key decision makers, and then for day-to-day stuff. And then for the major decisions, obviously, that need to go to council will come to council. Mr. Sims will be over some of the larger decisions that don't necessarily require council approval. And then the steering committee will help us to stick to deadlines, disseminate information, be sure that everybody on their end is following through with getting their tasks completed, and disseminating information to Tyler in the setup. So the steering committee can be made up of whomever, needs to be a part of that. Our initial thought was department heads know what they want and need in their software, in their department, and so that's a good place to start. But the statement of work also covers timelines as far as response to troubleshooting and problems And then again, they'll finalize the schedule and finance statement and all that stuff once we get this part finalized. And then, once it's signed, they have 45 days before they actually start implementation. And that's for them to gather last minute information and just make a very detailed plan on what we're gonna do. That's gonna be the basis of all of this, is having a good plan in place to get started. It's gonna be big, but it's gonna be good. For staff and city and the citizens, it's gonna be really good at change.
Thank you, Becca. You know what, I do have some questions, and as you mentioned, this is a big project.
Mhm.
Will be good for both staff and our customers. I'm sure, you know, Mike is really excited to get some, he's nodding his head, very excited to get, you know, some software that meets the needs of staff and customers and takes us to the new world that we're in versus
Absolutely.
the older systems that we have. The 5-year auto renewal, the 5-year contract with the auto renewal,
Mhm.
who is going to be responsible for, you know, checking, do we want to continue to renew this project? Will they push something forward to us? Is it up to the city to remember, you know, it's auto renewal, we need to have a look at this contract?
We will have an end date, like the end of term date, and they typically will send you something that says your contract's gonna auto renew in 30 days or 60 days. You have 60 days to cancel. That's gonna be, fall under the IT umbrella. But it's up to us to reach out to the departments every year and say, is this software meeting your needs? And do our own internal evaluation. And if it's not, then we make the decision to look for something else. And then we have our 60 days to cancel before the actual end of term. And they usually do send us something that says, you're up for renewal in February and November. You're up for renewal in February, or, you know, just FYI, if you don't renew or cancel at this time, then it's gonna auto renew.
Appreciate the information, that makes sense. You know, it certainly is a big project, so as I was reviewing the statement of work with a lot of great detailed information, I was confused with the tables with the, who are the stakeholders and whether it's the city or Tyler's responsibility. So I'm glad to hear that, you know, that's something that will be updated, and so will the financials. And it sounds like, from what I read, that Tyler, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler Technologies is going to train our staff here, or maybe, in this case, maybe you're going to be the trainer for the trainees. And then if staff has questions, will they have you as an option and Tyler Technologies to get into contact? And I ask that because being part of, you know, being kind of the end user.
Right.
At a larger organization, when you have projects like this put in place, I mean, you may have questions. It may take a whole year before the entire department really, you know,
Gets everything.
really good at utilizing the new programs that have been implemented. And who do you reach out to when you?
I think we're very fortunate in that we have True North on board, because they're gonna do a lot of the training along with Tyler as they go through. So they're gonna have a lot of back-end knowledge, and the staff, yes, Tyler's gonna do training. It's important that all of the staff be on board and participate in the process of getting all of it set up and initiated, and then participate in the training so that they do understand, because we haven't had anything this robust before. Well, PD did previously, but it's been a number of years. But then True North will have some of that training also, so staff can reach out to them, and if it's beyond their level, then we have access to Tyler staff throughout the length of our contract, so.
Yeah, I'll just also go back to something that we talked about at the last city council meeting, and that is that, remember, there's a phrase in the contract that is city project manager. City project manager in this case is actually a True North employee who helps us implement this. So when that whole section that Dawn just brought up here in front of us, city project manager, that's what that person's role is. So True North will add an employee, and that person will, amongst other things, manage the implementation of this project for us so that we have a really good IT professional who's just helping all of the directors and all of the staff make the transition. And you can see all of the individual tasks listed there in front of you.
Thank you. And I know there's the finance plan and some other updates. Did you say we can expect this in a week, or is that going to give enough time, maybe?
We're hoping in a week. It may be the following week, but I'm being optimistic and saying a week.
Yeah, I'll just remind council, you've got meetings on, I believe, the 5th, and we skip the 12th, and then we come back around on the 19th. So if we don't hit the 5th, that'll flip it over to the 19th. And then the only other thing I would say is part of the discussion today with Becca and John Cross and I on our conference call on this topic was John's assignment to go out and kind of finalize the rest of the negotiations about how to, we showed you the purchase price last time around, and we talked about how that might phase in over different fiscal years. I'm pretty concerned about making sure that we manage which fiscal year we make the payments in, and that needs to also match up with the implementation of the project. So that was kind of one of these last issues that we're dealing with. And John and Beck and I talked through that today. That sends John out on the task to be working with Tyler Technologies to get it done the way we want it done. And if he does that quickly, it'll come faster. If Tyler doesn't like what we have to say, then that'll be what slows it down. But we're going to want to do it our way, and we're pretty insistent in our negotiations.
Sure. Do I hear any other questions or comments regarding this item? With that, thank you very much, Becca, for the presentation. Thank you. At this time, we will discuss and consider ordinance number 2900, an ordinance of the city council of the city of Terrell, Texas, and I will let our city attorney, Greg Shumpert, read.
Thank you,
the
Madam
entire-
Pro Tem. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2900, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Texas, amending Chapter 9, Section 9-9, Civil Service Classification Plan, A, classification of firefighters, and B, classification of police officers. 9-9A1, positions appointed by the fire chief, and 9-9A2, firefighter classifications, and 9-9B1, positions appointed by the chief of police, and 9-9B2, police officer classifications, revised code of ordinances of the city of Terrell, Texas, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
And this falls under city manager Mike.
So, Mayor and Council, as Carol Holland presented it to you last time, and I think we talked a little bit also with Police Chief Ken McKean, whenever we moved forward to add the 2 officers to patrol so that we could move 2 officers over to narcotics, that makes a 4-member narcotics unit, and the preference was to have a working street supervisor associated with the narcotics unit. That street supervisor is the sergeant level for us. So we're going to continue to have 4 in narcotics when we're fully staffed, but instead of having all 4 of them simply be patrol officers, since one of them will quite naturally need to be in charge of that group, we wanted to make that a sergeant position. So the old version of this ordinance showed sergeant at number of positions 4. The new number is 5, and the old version of this showed patrol officers at 30. This just takes us down to 29. So it's the same number of total bodies. Instead of being 4 and 30 in those 2 slots, now it's 5 and 29. And we feel like that's the best way to manage the supervision of our staff over in the police department.
Thank you, Mike. Do you have any new questions or discussion regarding this item?
I just know, I kind of mentioned it last week. My concern is that our citizens are safe. You know, I know we've all heard the phrase, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. I guess I just have to see what this is gonna look like eventually, but I just wanna make sure that we have enough patrol officers for our citizens, even when I think about the sergeants and lieutenants, and I just wanna make sure too that our officers are trained and knowledgeable of the procedures that's appropriate to work in that capacity. But I don't know if I really get it, but that is still a concern of mine. It seemed like it's top-heavy, but it's, that's just my concern. I want to make sure when people call, when citizens call, we get there, and maybe it's just changing numbers or whatever, and to make it more efficient, but I don't really get it, but.
Let me just kind of walk through it a little bit more detail. Lieutenant is the position that is my office position, okay? So whenever you're at the captain level or the lieutenant level,
Okay.
you're spending a lot of your time behind a desk, and you're making sure that the world behind the desk in the police department operates correctly. When you're a sergeant or you're a patrol officer, you are in the field, in a vehicle, walking around, talking to people. You are out there in the field, okay? So you might say, okay, what I really have is I really have 10 people, 3 captains, 7 lieutenants, who are my desk guys. Then for sergeant and patrol officers, I really have 34 people who are out and about doing the outside field work on a day-to-day basis, okay? In order to have a well-trained and accountable and well-managed narcotics department where we are following all the rules and doing everything right, instead of having those 34 people have only 4 individuals out in the field who are able to be the field supervisor and say, okay, I'm in charge here, and I can make a determination about following procedure correctly. Instead of only having 4 of those people, we wanted to have 5 of those people, because one of them will be specialized only in the narcotics unit. So I still got 4 people walking around doing narcotics work. It's just instead of all 4 of them looking at each other and saying, well, who's in charge right now? Now we have one person in charge. And that's sort of the way we were looking at it. There is a lieutenant who is over the narcotics program. So all of the background paperwork that needs to get done to keep narcotics rolling, that already is assigned to a lieutenant. This is really just strictly about, when I've got those 4 individuals in the field, can I call one of them the leader of that group of 4? And that's what this change allows us to do.
So the sergeant is the leader in the field?
Yes.
Okay, because when I'm looking at it, I'm going, dang, a quarter of those people are bosses, or, I don't know, okay. But sergeants are still gonna be out on the street. They're gonna be helping patrol, whatever we need to do if we need help.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so those 5 go with the 34. So 10 of 34 would be, so the lieutenants are not out on the street patrolling, doing those things?
Yeah, almost all of the time, the lieutenants are handling the vast amount of paperwork that we've got to get done on the inside of the operation. They're shift-based, right? So that some of those guys are working at night to make sure that we've got, supervisory coverage at night. And remember, if a bad thing happens out in the community, then the lieutenants go. They get out in the field as soon as a bad thing happens, but that's reactionary. So you're just talking about the day-to-day work of being out in the field. That's your sergeants and that's your patrol officers.
Right. It just seemed like we're losing a third. Actually, it's more than 20, a quarter. Like a third of the people are at desk, but it has to be something tragic and big to happen. They're on the field, but we're losing 10 of those 44. Okay.
But just
It
for
makes better
clarity,
sense to know that the sergeants are gonna be out helping with patrol and protecting our citizens. That makes me feel a little better.
but the only action tonight is just within the narcotics group, right? Where we're taking the 4, okay, and shifting the positions, right? Okay.
So those other 7 plus 3, the 7 lieutenants and the 3 captains, they're currently already at the desk.
They're already there.
That's right. That's today's lay of the land. Yep.
Do we have any more comments or questions regarding this item? Well, Stephanie, we really appreciate your comments and your questions, and thank you, Mike, for, doing your best to answer those questions and comments as well.
Action on that?
We do need to take action on this item. Do I hear a motion regarding this item?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve ordinance 2900.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I heard a motion from Tim Royce, and I heard a second from Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Holmes Thomas. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. At this time, we will discuss and consider resolution number 2000.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, we bring to you tonight Resolution Number 2000, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Texas, adopting the Kaufman County Hazard Mitigation Action Plan as required by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the Texas Division of Emergency Management, TEDM, and establishing an effective date. And I believe we have Dustin Connor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
We have Emergency Management Coordinator Dustin Connor that this item falls under. Go ahead, Dustin.
Great, thanks for having me. It's good to be here again. Last week we talked about, you got it in that 3-ring binder. I know everybody's had a chance to go through that, so really appreciate that. The county has already adopted the plan, so now it falls to the cities who have the option to also adopt that, so that it opens up some grant dollars for us through a few grant programs. So that's really where we are, is just adopting a resolution that supports that for them.
Very exciting material.
It's real good.
Yes, I liked it. I liked it so much, I'm ready to vote on it.
You don't want to talk about it for a little bit? Let's page by page. 490 pages.
All to vote.
Do we have any other additional questions or comments regarding this item? The last comment I'll make regarding this item is that I concur with Councilmember Tim Royce. Certainly flipped over to the City of Terrell tab, so I have questions for Dustin and Mike regarding how can we get some of these funds, and have heard that we have already, attempted to receive some funds through the hazard mitigation grant. So with that, do I have a motion?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve ordinance 2000. No.
Resolution.
Resolution 2000.
So here a motion from Councilmember Tim Royce. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second from Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Holmes Thomas. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor let it known by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. At this time, we will discuss and consider the development agreement for the 6th Street Partnership. This item falls under the Director of Municipal Development, Charles Fenner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. I had presented these two developers agreements you'll see in the packet last week. The first one, their same individual, Mr. Reyes, has done a developer's agreement already with us. And so these are just small infill projects that he is doing. The first one is 2 lots off of 6th Street. The focus in on page 2 again was the agreement is for 100% masonry, high-quality brick or stone, accepting limited architectural features in that. And then 80% for the brick or stone on the 2nd floor with 3 architectural features inserted. We'll have the setback of the porch within the 3 foot. And that was the only thing that we really had changed there. Then he'll follow the standards, underlying standards. Anything that is not in here, he'll follow under the SF6. And the only thing on the actual 2 lots that'll end up being subdivided, they'll be 63-foot width instead of a 65-foot. So this was pretty clear for us to approve this developers agreement and work through with Mr. Reyes, because we know we'll have some good development, and it'll have 2 lots. We're missing like I said, the width by 2 feet. And we're getting 2 new lots to have 2 new homes. 100% masonry and so forth, so.
Beautifully said. 2 lots, 2 homes, Charles.
2 lots, 2 homes.
Yes, it's moving.
So any questions for me? Again, we went over this last meeting, so.
I would say that we appreciate the developer working with the city and bringing forth a good product.
Thank you. I'll let him know.
Yeah.
He's looking around and boy, he's really trying to find some infill stuff to do all kinds of different little things.
I will send you addresses.
So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Royce, for your comments. Certainly, any and all progress and development in the city of Terrell is great to hear. Do I hear a motion regarding this item?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve the Sixth Street Partnership as discussed in item 9.3.
I hear a motion from Councilmember Tim Royce. Do I have a second?
A second.
I hear a second from Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Holmes Thomas. Any further discussion? All those in favor, let it known by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. At this time, we will discuss and consider the development agreement for the 900 South Catherine Street Partnership. And once again, this falls under Director of Municipal Development, Charles Fenner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. 1 lot, 1 home. So, same thing, we had this discussion, 100% brick and stone on this particular piece, 25% minimum. What we did have on this house, on this particular lot, was that it's already there. And really, he can build on this lot, just meeting certain standards, but it's always difficult to build on some of these lots when they're wanting to do a certain type of house. He would have to have some setbacks. And the reason I say he could be grandfathered because the property's already there. So he worked with us just to do a couple different things. And we just wanted to call it out like it is. It is a 40-foot lot, already platted. He's agreed to a 1,700 square foot home here and 100%, like I said, brick and stone, 25% on the second story with 3 architectural features so he can be creative in his design. The same thing with our streetscape as we continue to go down and these areas in the infill and create that streetscape. So this one was pretty simple for us.
Thank you. As I mentioned last week, the 900 Street Catherine address is located in District 3 that I represent, and had concerns from community members about the upkeep of the lot, and we all deserve to feel proud of where we live, and any development that helps provide a new home in the community and new neighbors and a different face is always a good thing. Do I hear any new questions or discussion regarding this item? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the 900 South Catherine Street Partnership as presented.
Hearing a motion from Councilmember Tim Royce, do I have a second?
A second.
Hearing a second from Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Holmes Thomas. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it know by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, Mayor.
Motion carries. At this time, we will discuss and consider modification request number 2 for the 20-18 Downtown Revitalization Program Phase 2, Grove Street for additional sidewalk improvements, and City Manager Mike Sims will review this item.
So Mayor and Council, this is a fun little history lesson. As you recall, back in 2016, we received a grant to pay for part of the cost of our comprehensive plan that we ended up working on in 2017. and adopted by ordinance very early in 2018. So that comprehensive plan was rather expensive to develop. There's a lot of details that were put into that. We did a downtown plan at the same time. When we worked on that, we also became eligible for what they call these downtown revitalization grants. So the same grant agency, Texas Department of Agriculture, that gave us a little money to do the comprehensive plan, they gave us the money necessary to do the Adelaide sidewalk that picks up right at the railroad track and then runs down to Broad and then a little bit on Grove. That little intersection right there, that was done as Phase 1. This is Phase 2. So the first one, we got about $250,000 for that Phase 1 improvement on Adelaide. And then this is the Phase 2 grant. We were approved for $435,000, and we thought that we were bringing forward a project that would end up in today's crazy world of construction costs, costing us $435,000. When we got the bids back, we found out that we were quite low on that, and so we had about $163,000 left to spend. So Frank Stevens and Glenn Caldwell worked on this. We sat down and talked about it together. The map that I think is on the next page, one more, shows you the odd geography here. That geography there about where we're allowed to spend these funds dates all the way back to 2016 and the original definition about what they were calling blighted area or area in need of revitalization way back then. So it's a little odd that they always use that term or phrase, but it's their language for the grant program. So the purple on here is what we originally went out to bid for, and that shows you purple being the sidewalk running along Grove, and you can see we're building right along the block between Rockwall, go all the way over to Medora, and then go over to South Francis. We exclude the area in orange there because that's the area that will be impacted in some way by the town square. And then, because we don't want to build anything and then rip it out later, that'd be a bad idea. And then there's a little bit more purple line shown east of Adelaide, running from Adelaide over close to, but not quite all the way to Virginia. We've got some parking issues in the way there. So we asked ourselves, okay, if we have leftover money, what can we spend it on that we didn't already build and we won't have to rip up later? And the answer to that question is the yellow lines on this map. So the Virginia section is going to be impacted by the Quiet Zone project. We didn't want to impact that. College, Catherine, Francis, Adelaide, they all get Broad. They all get impacted by the Town Square project. So when you do process of elimination on that, we say, okay, let's spend that money on the remaining eligible streets. And so that's this section of Medora that is shown here. Just drove that the other day to take a second look at it. I think that's a perfectly great location for a sidewalk. And then there's a little bit on Cottage, turning over between Francis and Medora, and a little bit on Cottage between Adelaide and Virginia. We feel like that'll spend out the remaining amount of the grant. So if you tell me I have $435,000 to spend, I want to spend every single dime of it. And that's what we've done by creating this modification. So we're basically asking your permission to add this to what we build. And that is, if you'd like us to move forward on that, then the motion in this case would be to approve modification request number 2 as presented.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you to staff for obtaining this grant to begin with, and it's great to see that the bid for the first part of the project came in under, allowing us to expend the rest of the funds in additional sidewalks. So I think it's always great when we obtain free funds that directly impact our citizens in a day-to-day basis, in this case, through sidewalks. I know that one of the areas that these sidewalks are going in is the Dollar General area, which community members walk back and forth to since it's walking distance. But any improvements to sidewalks or additions to sidewalks are to be celebrated. Do I have any questions or discussions regarding this item? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve modification request number 2 in item 9.5 as presented.
Hearing a motion from Councilmember Tim Royce, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Holmes Thomas. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it known by stating aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The motion carries. Having completed our agenda, we are adjourned.
Good job. Good
My
job.
goal was 7:30, 7:30.
All right. Good job.